Hey, everybody, back today. We're doing a top 20 Tom Petty songs list. 10 wasn't good enough because Tom Petty is the man as far as I'm concerned. Today, I'm joined by Sam St. John. I
Hey,
want you to
Rich.
I want you to sub his channel. He's under 100 as far as I know. We need to get him up there because the guy's got a great channel. He's been on with Glenn Kellaway from the Basement doing Bob Dylan. He's done the Monkees. I know he's a huge Mike Nesmith fan. He's a Van Morrison fan, and of course a Tom Petty fan.
Tom Petty.
I've been looking for somebody to do a Tom Petty with for a while now, and everybody I asked wasn't a huge fan, and I know Sam is. So I contacted him. We agreed to do this, and I'm glad we're doing it. It's something I've been looking forward to. So we're going to do a
Thanks for
top
having me.
20. And of course, Tom Petty, for those out there who are unaware, I can't believe there are many of them. One of the great American rock and rollers, tremendous songwriter. I was fortunate enough to see him 6 times live while he was alive, and unbelievable performer as well. Can't forget that. But I'm attracted to the songwriting. He is a brilliant songwriter, or was a brilliant songwriter, perfectly constructed, melodic. He's got the hooks. He can write ballads as well as rockers. He's the total package as far as I'm concerned. His lyrics are fantastic as well. They might not be Dylan-esque, but they get the job done. So, and I want to give a shout out to the Heartbreakers too. He's got a great backing band. Mike Campbell, he's as good a guitarist as there is out there. Ben Montench, those guys have been with him since the beginning. And then, bass players like Ron Blair, later Howie Epstein, and then Blair again. Original drummer Stan Lynch, and then Mike Ferroni. And of course, later on, Scott Thurston was a multi-instrumentalist. So the Heartbreakers, they're part of the Tom Petty legacy. Of course, Petty did 13 studio albums with the Heartbreakers, 3 solo Petty albums, a couple of Traveling Wilburys albums, and of course, 2 Mudcrutch albums, numerous greatest hits compilations, live album, posthumous collections, the whole 9 yards. So anyway, Sam, how'd you ever get hooked on Petty and all that stuff? Where did you first hear him, and did you like him at first, or did he grow on you? How'd that work?
Well, thank you again for having me, Rich. I appreciate the invitation for
Pleasure.
joining in to be your petty man, if you will. So, like everybody, of my age group, you hear songs like "Free Fallin'" all over the radio, and others like "Breakdown." The songs that they still play on the radio. "Mary Jane's Last Dance" is on the radio a lot.
Right.
But yeah, I think it was 8th grade, which would have been 2007, 2008. I got a Tom Petty his original greatest hits that had "Mary Jane's Last Dance" on it and "Something in the Air."
Right.
And I tore that album up on CD player. I listened to it backwards, forwards, any which way. And later that same year, when I was really getting into Petty, I received the Traveling Wilburys double disc box set, and really, really, really got into the first album. I listened to the second one more so now that in my older period of liking Petty, but starting out, it was that first album or nothing. It was, again, on repeat all the time in the car and in the kitchen when I was eating. It was just, and Petty being in that echelon of musicians that were in the Wilburys, and then of course finding out how fantastic just the Heartbreakers were as a band, like you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
That really got me on. And what was great about finding Petty out which is a pun, finding out, to quote Petty, late in 2007, 2008, that's when he was starting to get Mudcrutch back together, that
Right.
first Mudcrutch album. And I can't remember where I saw that advertised because I wasn't on social media or anything at that point. And it wasn't that big of a deal online to be online all the time. And I saw that Mudcrutch was coming out, and I just knew that Tom Petty was in it. And I was like, well, I've been listening to all these Tom Petty songs on the greatest hits and the Wilburys. I'm just going to hop on this Mudcrutch album. And man, that was like the third Petty related album that I bought. And I just, I tore it up. Loved it to death. I loved the covers. I loved because I knew the song. I think the reason I got it was because I knew the song Shady Grove, because I was a big fan of Andy Griffith, and the Dillards did Shady Grove, does the Darlings on Andy Griffith. And so to hear Petty do Shady Grove, because when you don't think about it, you're like, well, Petty can't really do, country bluegrass music.
Right.
When in fact, he can. And actually, what I wish he had done in his lifetime was make an actual country album. I think that would have been fantastic with the Heartbreakers, because the Heartbreakers were really good studio musicians too, and they backed up like Johnny Cash, and different Heartbreakers went with different groups. Mike Campbell played with people, Howie Epstein produced people, so they're just a solid group of individuals that came together at the right moment in history to form, in my opinion, the greatest American rock band. And that's
I can't argue with you. Won't even argue with it. Tremendous.
I love him to death. I love the man. I wish I could have seen him live, but alas, I was not able to.
And they had more to give too. I mean, unfortunately, he passed away in 2017, but he was still, from what I understand, he's got a lot of stuff in the archive still that hasn't been released yet.
Yeah.
And he still would have been cranking out stuff well into his 70s, I think,
Well, even, the big thing that they were talking about when he was not, but before he died, was he really wanted to put Wildflowers out in his lifetime as a box set, which his estate did, his widow and daughter and surviving members of the Heartbreakers. And he wanted to tour it, and he wanted to play all the songs, the Wildflowers, and then the additional 10 songs that he recorded during those sessions, and to bring out guest musicians and do all sorts. He was on full throttle after those last couple of shows at the Hollywood Bowl in 2017. Like, he wanted to keep going, and his wife said he'd never been happier. Oh, and 2 weeks later, he was gone. It was just a shock.
One of the most shocking celebrity deaths, as far as I'm concerned. It really hit me hard.
Yeah,
really did. All right, like we are accustomed to doing on our lists, we're going to start with honorable mentions, songs that we wanted to fit in, squeeze in there, but they just missed the cut. So I'm going to go with Sam first. And what did you have as your honorable mention list?
Well, if I could, because it was only 20 songs that we chose from, I would just say the rest of the catalog, but that's not really fair. Because in my opinion, Petty never sang a bad song or wrote a bad song.
Yeah.
But for the sake of the video, I do have 6 or 7 here that I'll just roll through. Talking about the country theme, the song Mystery Man, I love it. Some steel guitar on it. It's an early Petty track. I love Mystery Man. Insider, his duet with Stevie Nicks from Hard Promises, another one that just barely didn't make the cut. Crawling Back to You from Wildflowers, a beautiful ballad.
Love it.
On the other side of the spectrum, Zero from Outer Space from the She's the One soundtrack, just a killer underrated rocker that they did. I mean,
I like that too.
As a rock band, it's a killer song. Hungry No More, which is the last track from the second Mudcrutch album, and is what they actually, his box set that came out a few years ago, The American Treasure, they closed with a live version that Mudcrutch did in 2017 or 18. It's so touching. It's a great way for Petty to end his career. Probably the deepest track of the whole list, it's a song from the Wildflowers box set called Harry Green, that he wrote, from what I understand, about a high school friend of his who died in an automobile accident, who was just a cool guy that the kids looked up to.
Right.
Beautiful. It was. I can't believe it was never released until last year. Also from the second Mudcrutch album, I Forgive It All, a beautiful acoustic ballad that he did. And then last on my honorable mention list from Wildflowers, the song Time to Move On, which I actually just added a few hours before this video, because when he died, that was a song that a lot of people were quoting. It's time to move on, time to get going. What lies ahead, I have no way of knowing.
Exactly.
So those are my few honorable mentions, but like I said, I would throw 100 more on there if I could.
Yeah, 2 of your honorable mentions actually made my list. I won't say which ones yet, but they'll show up later. I just want to throw out a few. The hits of the Petty classics that did not make the list: The Waiting, couldn't squeeze it in. Don't Come Around Here No More, and You Don't Know How It Feels. They did not make my list. Some ballads that I really love: Southern Accents, It'll All Work Out, and Wildflowers didn't make the list. That just shows you how strong his work is, because those are all great songs. I have a couple songs from Echo that I like: Swingin' and Billy the Kid. Love them. Counting on You again. And Cabin Down Below is a song that I really like too. So those are the ones I want to throw a little love to that just couldn't squeeze in.
It hurts.
I know it does. This was a real tough list. I say that about all of them. I figured, extending it to 20 would help, but not really. It's still tough. All right, so we're going to start your number 20, and then we're going to go back and forth the whole way out.
Yes, sir. All right, number 20 that just made the cut of the list is from the Long After Dark album, and the song is "Change of Heart," which I fell in love with. Originally, I got the playback DVD of his music videos, and that's where I first heard the song. It was like a live version of it, and it's just like a killer rocker, just crunchy guitar by Mike Campbell. It's a great song. It's one that should have been on the radio more than it was, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't around when it was there, but it's one of those that should have stood the test of time, and because it's just it's a greatest hit for anybody else.
Yeah, I think it had some moderate success, but you're right. It should have been a monster hit for sure.
Yeah, so that's my number 20.
My number 20 is one of his bigger songs, "Running Down a Dream." I couldn't leave it off the list. I thought it was too good a song. And in fact, this particular documentary by Peter Bogdanovich is called Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, "Running Down a Dream." So, and this is fantastic. This is 3 CDs and a DVD package. I recommend that to anybody who would love to know more about Petty. "Running Down a Dream," number 20. I just love it. The beginning, that guitar riff in the beginning, I mean, just it takes off. The reference to Del Shannon, me and Del singing "Runaway," love it. So,
and from what I understand, that guitar solo was a one take. They just kept recording, and Campbell just ripped it.
Yeah, and it's got the extended solo at the end too, and the whole thing works. And I didn't want to put all hits on my list, but this is one I couldn't leave out. So
yeah. And one thing I forgot to mention about "Change of Heart," sorry to go back, but I didn't realize it was inspired by the song "Do Ya" by The Move, which Jeff Lynne was part of in its later configuration. And you can listen to it and hear it.
I did not know that. I'll have to listen to it again and pick that out. I did not know that either.
Yeah, that was cool. I found that out.
Excellent.
All right. Very cool.
19.
And I'm like you, some hits. There are some hits that just had to leave the list, and I've got some others on here. This is not one of them, but this was one of my sleeper albums. It's the album "Into the Great Wide Open," and the song is "All the Wrong Reasons," which I think is just this album helped me get through one of my college years. I've listened to it on repeat, and "All the Wrong Reasons" is just the way that the melody of the guitar matches the melody of the vocals. Just a clean 12-string, breezy sounding guitar. I mean, it's one of those songs. Petty's vocals just kind of soar up over everything else. I mean, he had a high register to his voice, and he could hit some big notes, and that's one of those. He's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. It's kind of like that constantly throughout the song. Just a summary sounding song, but some just great. It's almost like an aging song, like he's aging, and it's just one of those songs that I'd never get sick of. And again, one that should have been more than it was.
Got a lot of them. My number 19 is actually the first Tom Petty song I ever heard from, of course, the debut album. Sorry about the glare. And that's "Breakdown."
Oh.
It's the first song I remember hearing. It was actually on the radio all the time. It was even before "American Girl." It was the first hit. And I just like the lyrics and the mood of the song. "There's no sense of pretending, your eyes give you away. Something inside you is feeling like I do. We said all there is to say," and then "breakdown." Just tremendous. It
is.
It's one I always go back to. If I'm making like a CD with all the best of Tom Petty, I'm not going to leave that off, because it's just a staple as far as I'm concerned.
And great, like, jazzy drumming too. Just the background, boom, bop, boom, boom, bop, like that.
I love that. And then he does a little thing with his voice too, where he sort of, I don't know if it's a whisper or not, but Do do do
Yeah,
do. You know,
yeah.
that's cool too to add that.
And I love the live anthology. I think the version where he does "Hit the Road Jack." He segs into "Hit the Road Jack" live with that song, but they're like
Yeah.
8 minutes. It's great.
Yep. Very good.
Good pick.
All right, we're up to
Alrighty,
18.
18. So I'm going to jump ahead in Petty's career a little bit. Another underrated album, Highway Companion. It was
Yep.
his last solo album that he, and also his final work with Jeff Lynne in terms of a collaboration on a full album. The song is "Flirting with Time,"
That's the
which
one
is
I would have
just
picked. That's my favorite song on that album, but I left it off.
it's just one of those. It's just like it's the drum just boom 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 boom. Okay, it just it breaks like it's acoustic. It's jangly. I mean, people have talked about this album being like a solid combination of Full Moon Fever, his first solo album, and then Wildflowers, his second solo album.
Yeah.
And of course, it's not a true Tom Petty solo album because his wingman Mike Campbell, of course, is all over it, and it's essentially a Petty, Lynn, and Campbell trio. I mean, they're all doing the different instruments
Yeah.
together. But "Flirting with Time," it's just again, it's one of those where his voice goes up at the end. It's that high Tom Petty vocal. Even at this point, he was in his late 50s. People were thinking, oh, well, Petty, he's older now, but thankfully we got another 10 years plus out of him after that album came out. But it's just a great album. If it had come out in another time, if it wasn't 2006, where this kind of music was still played on the radio, if it had come out in the 70s, it would have been a big song for him. And I know it was a live song. That and "Saving Grace" from that album were both live songs like on that tour. But
I like "Flirting with Time." I think that's the right song. That's the one I would have picked.
"Time Baby," it's catching up with you. Like it's such a good song.
And it's so melodic.
It's very melodic.
"Flirting with Time, Baby." It's a sing-along song. It's fantastic.
It goes back to his Byrds roots, where he was influenced by the Byrds. I mean, you could hear him and McGuinn duetting on that maybe.
Yeah, it's a good one. All right, cool. My number 18 is another one of these hits, I guess you'd have to say. Mary Jane's Last Dance. Big, huge video on MTV. Could be a drug reference song, could be growing up in small town America. There's different meanings. Take out of it what you want. She was 18, blew the boys away more than they'd seen. I like that line. It's about getting out. I dig you, baby, but I got to keep moving on. Tired of screwing up, tired of going down, tired of myself, tired of this town. Put on that party dress, buy me a drink, sing me a song, take me as I can because I can't stay long. So you can see that he's at that age where he's flirting with a pretty girl in town and can't stay. He just wants to make his mark, get out. It's a transitional kind of song. He's tired of that town. He wants to move on, see what's out there in life.
Yeah.
I feel summer creeping in. I'm tired of this town again. And then the drug references. I hit the last number. I walk to the road. A number could be a joint.
Sure.
So,
and of course,
multiple references. I just like the song. The video is pretty cool too.
Yeah, he's dancing with the body.
Yeah, it's different. He made some obscure kind of videos, but what can you say?
Yeah, and from what I understand, because it was recorded specifically for the Greatest Hits package, and he was kind of upset because, for one, he's like, why he didn't understand putting new songs on Greatest Hits packages, which thankfully it became a huge hit for him.
Right.
It was recorded. It kind of broke up his Wildflower sessions too, and at that point there were some tensions between the Heartbreakers and Stan Lynch, the drummer, but this song brought them back together with Stan Lynch, I think, for the final recording sessions.
Here's the Greatest Hits.
And he was like, why would I give up such a good song, when I'm making Wildflowers, which I'm so proud of? But, it didn't hurt him.
I think that was the last song that Stan Lynch may have played on, too. I believe it was.
It was definitely the last day of recording with him. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Very cool.
Very good. Number 17. What do you have?
17. I am moving to the sophomore album You're Gonna Get It, and the song is No Second Thoughts,
Nice.
which is a deeper cut for those of you that don't know. I mean, the second album, of course, the sophomore slump is a big expression in the music industry where they're worried that
Right.
that's what's going to make or break you. Like you had a big hit on the first album, like the first album he had Breakdown, he had American Girl. This album he had I Need to Know and Listen to Her Heart, and they were back to back on the album. But No Second Thoughts follows Listen to Her Heart, and it's just like this really, it's very summery, like percussive, like some bongos. I think when they did it live, even like Stan Lynch would come from behind the set, like the drum set, and he would either play bongos or like he would strum guitar too with all of them. And it's a neat little song. It could almost be a country song, but it's one that I enjoy. I play guitar, and it's one that I enjoy playing on guitar. And just a great story. Like she threw down her golden band, dug it with her teeth, with her feet into the sand, took her silent partner by the hand. Like it's about her, like she's throwing off the wedding ring and going off with her extra fella, so to speak.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of information in like a 2.5 minute song. I mean, it just shows, and it just shows what kind of writer Petty was, how he could do a whole story in 2.5 minutes. I mean, it's brilliant.
I agree. My number 17 is one that you had on your honorable mentions, and that's Time to Move On. I think I like this song more every time I hear it, especially given that he's moved on, I mean, it's just what lies ahead, I have no way of knowing. Under my feet, the grass is growing. It's time to move on. It's time to get going. Now, you could talk about life like that, or you could talk about just moving on to a different plane, whatever you want to call it. I'd like some of those little lines he uses in the song, like a deer in the headlights. It's like stuck. What's coming next?
Mm-hmm.
Which way to forgiveness? He's looking maybe to make amends for something. She's an honest defector, a conscientious objector, now her own protector. So he's coming out of a relationship, and the woman is sort of on her own too. I mean, that's what I'm taking of it. A relationship that's moved on. It's just a great song. Little melodic kind of acoustic number. I love it.
I love it too. And again, it's more poignant after he died.
That's what I think too. Yeah.
I want to say one of his daughters posted lyrics to that song like shortly after he died. So I mean, it just cuts to you.
Yeah. So that had to make my list. I mean, some of the others got booted out because I had to have that in there.
Yeah, I understand. I've got a bunch like that.
Cool.
Number 16, it looks like. So I'm gonna move to, in my heart, this is my favorite Petty album, though when I get older, it might not be, but I almost have to like tell myself that, no, this is supposed to be your favorite Tom Petty album, because it's one of the first real Petty albums that I owned that wasn't a greatest hits. So the album was Full Moon Fever.
Yep.
And the song is the Apartment Song, which is it's a bluesy little, kind of melody. Just about small, living in an apartment, kind of making ends meet. I used to live in a 2-room apartment, neighbors knocking on my door. Times are hard, but I don't want to knock it. Which is a great, times are hard, I don't want to knock it. But there's a great version that he recorded, like a full version with Stevie Nicks doing the harmony with him, which is really cool. They play it on Tom Petty radio a lot on Sirius XM. But that's one that I remember when I first heard the album, because you listen to the album and it's just about half of his greatest hits album, Full Moon Fever.
Yeah.
And then you get to the Apartment Song and like the latter few songs, and you're like, wow, that's a good one that you've never heard before. When you first hear it, especially, I remember like first hearing this album, the first few plays, and really like hooking on to the Apartment Song. And again, he harmonizes with himself on the final cut, but again, just the acoustic guitar, and then it's just one of those simple little shuffles that become hits. It's the same beat that they were using, with Bo Diddley and all the blues guys, early rock and roll. It could have been an early rock and roll song. So the Apartment song is 16.
Very good. My number 16 is the opening track off of Into the Great Wide Open, and that's called Learning to Fly. Another one I couldn't leave off. This is another one of these songs that you can interpret a few different ways. Petty says he wrote it about a pilot flying a plane. I read that online. Other people think it's about drugs, maybe maintaining that high, learning to fly, or life in general, facing one's fears. Could be any of those. I'm learning to fly, but I ain't got wings. Coming down is the hardest thing. The good old days may not return. The rocks might melt and the sea may burn. I love that image. Some say life will beat you down, break your heart, steal your crown. I've started out. God knows where. I guess I'll know when I get there. Just brilliant imagery, feelings, emotions. Classic Petty song. Learning to Fly. That's my number 16.
Great opener too.
And a great opener to that album. That drum will begin just takes off. It sets the tone for the album.
Yeah.
So
all right. Number 15.
15.
So I'm moving on to Wildflowers and the song, which was his last top 40 hit, You Don't Know How It Feels.
Nice.
Again, one that I always loved when I first heard the Wildflowers. It took me a long time to fully latch on to the Wildflowers album. I had to get a little bit older to really get into Wildflowers, but I mean, that's one that they always played on one of the classic rock stations when I was in middle and high school. And of course, there's a drug reference about rolling another joint, which some places edited out. But for me, the reason I liked it was because at this point is when I started getting into Bob Dylan with his, playing harmonica with guitar. And so when I was getting into Bob Dylan and I hear this song and it's Tom Petty, I'm like, well, I got to learn that song when I play guitar and harmonica. So that was like the automatic mission for me once I heard that song. But I mean, it's just I mean, it's classic Petty. It's slow. It can groove. Just the drums are almost like too slow, like boom, bop.
Yeah, I can see that.
I mean, and it's a cool little video. I mean, you were talking about his kind of weirder videos. It's just Petty standing there with his harmonica and guitar, and then like scenes kind of going around him, like circling around him in the background while he stays still. But it's a great tune. It's the second track on the album, but it was a huge live favorite from what I understand. You probably saw him do it live.
Oh yeah, big time.
People just screamed when that song started. The harmonica started.
I think in a lot, maybe the concerts I saw, I think Scott Thurston may have played the harmonica.
He does,
that.
Yeah.
But I love the song.
Yeah, because on the video it's Petty, but yeah, Scott Thurston's all over it. This was his first album with them as a session guy.
Yep, he's a hell of a multi-instrumentalist too. I've seen him on who was the other guy he did stuff with? I think he did some Jackson Browne work.
Jackson Browne.
Yeah. So he's a behind the scenes guy.
Yeah, he's been around.
Howie Epstein's another one that's underrated. He's played with a lot of people too. Unfortunately, he's moved on, but that whole band's fantastic. My number 15 is from Echo, and that's Room at the Top. Another opener. And I just love the whole vibe of this song. Again, it could be drugs to escape depression and hopelessness. I got a room at the top of the world tonight. I got a room where everyone can have a drink and forget those things that went wrong in their life. I got a room at the top of the world tonight, and I ain't coming down. Go. And then it goes into a little instrumental. And then it changes up midway through. And it looks like he's begging, not maybe begging a woman who he loves to come back to him. And he says to her, Look deep in the eyes of love. I love you. Please love me. I'm not so bad, and I love you so. It's a different tempo than the chorus, but I just love the song. It's instrumentally, it's really sound too. It kicks butt.
Yeah. Well, that was kind of his. I mean, I know for years he hated that album, and then he was going through a divorce, and Howie Epstein was going through heroin,
Yeah,
and it got to a couple of those sessions. Ron Blair, that's when he started coming back into the scene for the bassist, and I know he didn't like to listen to that album very much until later in life. His now widow told him, like, that's a really good album. Like, and he listened to it. He's like, I had some good stuff, and I think on that last tour, I think he at least did "Swingin'" a couple of times. Like, he brought that song back out, but because he never does Echo songs live.
I love that album. I think it's probably his most underrated album. I don't know why. It flows really nicely. I like Swinging. I like Counting on You. Free Girl
Yeah,
Now is sort of a moderate hit, but I can live without that. I like Billy the Kid too.
yeah,
I went
yeah.
down hard like Billy the Kid, but I got up again. Good stuff.
Good pick.
All right. We're
All
down
right,
to 14, I guess.
14, and I guess this is the first big hit on my list. And I was like you, I had to cut a bunch of them. I know you mentioned a couple already that I've had to cut, either in your list already or the honorable mention. But this one, I had to put it in there. And again, back to Full Moon Fever. It's "I Won't Back Down,"
Yeah,
which is, of course, become an anthem.
absolutely.
Many times over. I know, like, the first time, I think, if I remember right, the first time that I ever heard "I Won't Back Down" was it was the 9/11 tribute concert, like the
Yeah,
American tribute concert, where they did like a very like slowed down, which he had done live a version like that, but in that particular version, they played it, and I remember watching it, and I was thinking that sounds like that could have been one of his older songs, and I didn't realize that that wasn't a new song, that it had come out at that point, 12 years prior
mhm.
with on Full Moon Fever. But it's just one. I mean, it's overplayed. I mean, it's one of those songs that I get frustrated because people are like, oh, I like Tom Petty. I Won't Back Down and Free Fallin'. And it's one of those, I'm just like, oh, well, there's so much more than that. But to take it as a song and what it means, I mean, it's just, it's a killer song. And I remember when after he died, at the University of Florida, during halftime at one of the football games, they played it over the loudspeakers, and the whole audience, they played like the whole song, and everybody
Yeah,
sang it. And that was really cool. It's a great video because it's got Jeff Lynne in it, it's got Mike Campbell, it's got Ringo Starr, and it's got George Harrison in it.
I
And
know.
Ringo didn't even play on the thing. They just said, "Oh, let's bring Ringo in."
Yeah,
But from what I understand, Harrison, who did play on the track, the recorded track, and of course at this time, 1989, the first Wilburys album had come out,
yeah,
and of course Petty, Lynn, and George were 60% of the Wilburys. But from what I understand, the day of the final takes, Petty had a cold, and George, being the eternal sage that he was, he made Petty some sort of like ginger like thing that he had to breathe in to clear his throat, and he said he knocked it out and went right into the recording booth and did it after Harrison gave him this
how about
ginger
that?
thing to smell. So Petty has a cold on that song, but who would know?
Yeah, like you said, it's an anthem. It made my list. It's going to be my top 10, actually. I think it's fantastic. And in concert, it's one of those ones that the whole audience gets behind.
I mean, this
I've been,
hey,
I've,
baby, yeah.
I've been there for it, and it sends chills up your spine.
Oh, it's like
Everybody's
it's like any greatest hit. I mean, like, I know for me being a Van Morrison fan, like, I'm like, I could go the rest of my life without hearing Brown Eyed Girl, and it would be too soon. But then I saw him in concert in 2018, and you're just like, you're singing it. So
right.
like,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
so I get it.
exactly right.
I
I mean,
get it.
when you got 20,000 or 18,000, however many people are in the arena, and they're all singing, "There ain't no easy way out. I won't back down." I mean, you just get into it. It rocks.
Yeah, you do.
And he's
And the
done, of
man who wrote
course,
it's right there.
he does acoustic version of it too, which I prefer the studio version myself.
Yeah,
But either
yeah.
way, you can't go wrong.
No, not at all.
My number 14 is from the Damn the Torpedoes album, of course. It's right there. My favorite Heartbreakers album, by the way, just for the record. And that is Even the Losers.
Mm.
I read a little bit on this. Petty said that he believes it was the first time he ever did LSD. He was 19 or 20 years old, and he had a crush on this girl in high school, someone that wouldn't give him the time of day, somebody out of his league, that type of thing. And that particular night, they sat on the roof and smoked cigarettes and stared at the moon, and that's part of that lyric. And they parked down by the overpass, rocks in the water like broken glass. I mean, he turns those moments into songs, and that's a great attribute of a songwriter. I should have known right then it was too good to last. So he knew in his heart that moment was not going to last. She was just giving him the time of day, maybe because, or throwing him a bone, let's say, because he had a band and he came back for a reunion or something, and he made something of himself. But I don't know. It's an interesting little sidebar.
Cool.
But I like how he turns these things into into songs. There's just that whole thing. If you can picture the guy and the girl sitting on the roof smoking cigarettes, and
yeah, I mean he's got to paint a picture in those verses in like 15 seconds before he gets to the chorus.
Right. Even the losers get lucky sometimes. I mean, that says a lot. Anybody that's struck out with hot chicks can feel that pain. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
So. And
from what I understand, also the chorus was made up as like a filler in the studio until like he could write something else. Like even the losers get lucky sometimes. That's all he could think of, and like like people fill the words to fit the melody so that they can write something better, and that's what ended up sticking.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, brilliant. Alrighty, Lucky 13. Let's move on now to the now it's popular again, the She's the One soundtrack that the Heartbreakers did. That was the follow-up to Wildflowers. A very, very underrated song, California, on that album. I absolutely love this song. I remember when I bought that album, I had heard a couple of the songs from that album, but I'd never heard California. This was just 3 or 4 years ago when I bought the album, and I heard California, and I was like, good grief, that's a good song. I mean, it's Birdsy, like BYR. If those of you that don't know, the Byrds were a huge influence on Petty, but it's just a great acoustic guitar. And at the end, there's kind of like some counter melody where Petty's kind of answering himself. He's like, California's been good to me, and then hope it don't fall into the sea. Sometimes you got to trust yourself. It ain't like anywhere else. It's just a love letter to California. It sounds like it could have been in the 60s. You could have heard, I don't know, you could have heard like maybe Buffalo Springfield or the Byrds or any of those. And there's a folky harmonica break toward the middle part. Again, it's another one I love to play on guitar and harmonica. It just shows Petty never lost his 1960s roots of what he loved. No.
Yeah.
And that song is 60s Laurel Canyon, California, all day long, and I love it. I love it to death. I would listen to it every day. I mean, I would. That song it's one of those that when I hear it, I'm just in a much better mood. Like it's one of those that just makes me very happy when I hear it. It's just a great song.
Yeah, I think a lot of his songs put you in that kind of mood. It's happy music. It's fun stuff. I mean, sure, he's got some dark lyrics in some of his material, but most of it has a positive vibe, and it's part of the attraction to his music. It's just fantastic.
Yeah.
My number 13 is sort of a hidden gem, I think, and that's off of Highway Companion, Down South.
Oh,
I really, really love this song. I mentioned before that Flirting with Time was my favorite song. I must have lied because I have this ahead of it. I love Down South. This is traveling back home. He's from the South to deal with ghosts of the past. And lyrically, it's one of his stronger songs as far as I'm concerned. Gonna see my daddy's mistress, gonna buy back her forgiveness, pay off every witness. So it's got that mysterious, secretive kind of stuff going on behind the scenes. He uses Southern references like Yankee Winters, Spanish Moss.
Mm.
What else? Samuel Clemens he refers to wearing
Seersucker and white linen.
seersucker and white linens. I had that written down exactly. So that all comes into play in the song. I think it's a clever song. Chase a ghost down south. Spirits cross the dead fields. Mosquitoes hit the windshields. All documents remain sealed. That's a cool alignment of lyrics there.
Yeah.
And if I and then the chorus, if I come to your door, let me sleep on your floor. I'll give you all I have and a little more. That's such a Southern,
Yeah.
what's the word? Hospitality kind of vibe,
Yeah.
So
And myself being, I'm from Virginia, so I mean a lot of that. I mean, we don't have a Spanish moss in Virginia, but a lot of that, like all documents remain sealed. To live in the South, I mean, there's a lot of things that people hide.
yeah,
Part of it from just the culture, from dating back to the Civil War, where or secrets, like family secrets, you don't tell. Like if somebody's having an affair with somebody else, like talking about his daddy's mistress, like you don't, like you just don't, you shut up about it, you don't gossip about it.
right.
And I mean, there's a lot of, especially like a generation, 2 generations before me, I mean, that I still know and love, grandparents, family members, just things that you never talk about. It's just taboo. And so that song really, and again, it's one of those songs too that it could have been on like the Southern Accents album if it had been written in the 80s.
Easily, yep.
And it would have fit the theme more than a lot of the songs that made it on the Southern Accents.
I
Which was
agree
supposed
100%.
to be it was supposed to be a concept album, but kind of failed a little bit at that. But great, that's a great pick.
I love that song. Almost made my top 10. I
Couple
kicked it out.
short.
Yeah.
Very cool.
All right, we're in the top dozen now.
We are, and this is this album's first appearance for me. It's from the Hard Promises album, and the song is "A Thing About You," which I absolutely it's one of the deeper cuts up in this upper level, but I wish it was one that he had done live more. I mean, it's just a killer rocker. I mean, just great drums by Stan Lynch. Just constantly, it's a simple chorus. Honey, let me tell you there's a thing about you. Baby, let me tell you, I got a thing about you. Like, don't matter what you say, don't matter what you do. I mean, it's just, I just love how it sounds. The melody is great.
Yeah.
I mean, I wish there was more I could say about it, because I mean, he didn't do it live other than like that tour and maybe a couple other off times. But I remember when I first heard it, again, when I heard the Hard Promises album, I was like, the first thing that I do when I get into music is like, I'm looking for like every live version that I can find, cover versions, alternate takes, whatever it is. And that one is very hard because like it's not well known. I mean, this album had some hits on it, but it's not one of his big ones. It's not like Damn the Torpedoes or Full Moon Fever.
No.
And that's one that people just don't cover that song. It's like even like people sitting in their basement playing guitar don't cover that song that much. So it's just one. It's got a lot of, I don't know, it's got a good feel to it. It reminds me of driving up and down the interstate, driving back and forth to college.
Yep.
And I love it to death. It's a killer rocker. Short song, but it's a killer rocker.
That's a true hidden gem right there, because like you said, you don't see it all that much.
Yeah.
My number 12 is a hit. Listen to Her Heart. Now this, to me, it's pure pop. It's got a Beatlesque kind of sound to it. I love the guitar, the melody. It's one of his most sing-along songs too, which I'm always into. And I heard it was written as a response to Ike Turner hitting on Petty's wife.
Really?
I read that online. Yeah, I could not believe. I didn't know that till earlier this week. So they were at a party, and evidently Ike Turner kept hitting on Tom's first wife. And then he puts in the lyrics, "You think you're going to take her away with your money and your cocaine."
That's Ike Turner, yeah.
Right. You keep thinking that her mind is going to change, but I know everything is okay. So Tom knew that she wasn't leaving with Ike or hooking up with Ike. he had confidence, which is
He's probably
cool.
laughing at it. He's probably laughing at him, honestly.
Right. Ike at that point had to be 30 years older than the wife at that point. But Ike had a reputation of being a kind of a sleaze. I mean, I hate to demean the man, but he had a reputation. And then the chorus, of course, pops in. You're going to listen to her heart. It's going to tell her what to do. She might need a lot of loving, but she don't
You don't
need
need you.
you. Pointing her finger right at Ike. And then here's another little shot. You just can't creep up behind her, and you can't understand that she's my girl. Yes, she's my girl. And then they jam on that song. Beautiful song, and it does have that poppy sort of Beatlesque kind of mid-60s tone to it.
Yeah.
Or even the Birds, that poppy kind of
Yeah.
12-string guitar, whatever they're playing in that. It's fantastic.
It's a great song. It's a great song.
All right, cool. Number 11.
All right, the final before the Big Ten. So number 11, to stay in that same vein of like Jangle Pop and Birdsey, which I love, from Into the Great Wide Open again, the dark of the sun, which it's one of those that it's like California. It's in a similar vein as California, just breezy. It's got Jeff Lynne, his tight harmonies behind it, and his production. I mean, it's Jeff Lynne production all day long. We will stand together. Yeah. I mean, I think this was another one where Petty's daughter had written, she said, "We will stand together, we will stand as one in the dark of the sun." And she had a picture of Petty after he died. So he's not one that he covered very much. And again, it's like a thing about you. It's one that you don't see very much for others, right, like you do for some of his other deeper cuts even. But yeah, I mean, not a lot to say about it. If you haven't heard it, check it out. I mean, again, the whole Into the Great Wide Open album is kind of a sleeper album where it had Learning to Fly on it as the big hit, and then the title track. But there's some good stuff on there. I mean, Petty was really working well with Jeff. He touched was golden. No matter who Wilburys album was coming out, Full Moon Fever was the previous album, so it was a golden period for Lynne and Petty.
Yeah, and he was doing. I think wasn't he on tour with Dylan at the time? Dylan and Petty, they did some things together around that time. Was that later?
Was just before the first Wilburys. I think that was 87 to 8.
Yeah. So from that time through, he was cranking them out for sure. All right. I think we're having some kind of. Am I glitching on your end? Do you see it?
You were, but right now you look pretty good.
Okay, because a couple times it was glitched. I can probably edit that out. Number 11, Shadow of a Doubt, A Complex Kid from Damn the Torpedoes. I think this is one of his more underrated songs again. I like the sound of the song. It's very, very youthful. It's got a lot of energy. She likes to keep me guessing. She got me on the fence with a little bit of mystery. She's a complex kid, but she's always been so hard to figure out. She likes to leave me with a shadow of a doubt. And it's a rocking song. It's got hooks galore in this song. Fantastic. I like I said, I think it's very underrated. It should have been. I think it was released as a single, but it really didn't go anywhere. I don't know why, but
yeah, that's amazing when that happens.
I like that song.
How's it going?
Looks like we're into the top 10, man.
Top 10, indeed. And I'm going to stick to the same album again. You already mentioned it. The opening track, Learning to Fly.
Nice. We both have one there. Good.
Yeah. It's one that I've learned on guitar. It's one of those earlier songs that I could play on guitar without actually looking at the music because it was the same 4 chords throughout the whole song.
Okay.
Again, a Jeff Lynne, Tom Petty masterpiece. It's a favorite of my mom's, so that's got some sentimental value to it. She loves Learning to Fly. just because I know specific, like I know she listened to it a lot, like when I was graduating high school and then college, just kind of,
Yeah. Oh
like
yeah.
one of those send off songs.
Yep.
But what I really like about this song as well is, so when Petty died, in 2017, Jeff Lynne had made a statement about, Petty being who he was, and George Harrison's estate made a statement, like the Wilburys families made a statement, but there was no word from Bob Dylan when Tom Petty died. And like,
Oh.
why isn't Dylan saying anything? Like, it's been almost a week since he's died and Dylan hasn't said anything. And of course, Dylan's very reclusive. Well,
Yeah.
then, like when you thought Dylan was just going to be a jerk about it, he finishes the show singing Learning to Fly and puts on like one of the best vocal performances of his like later life. Like he sounds like, I remember when I heard it, it was just because his concerts are very strict with no cell phones. So when you get audio and visuals from Dylan shows, somebody's taking a risk. But he sang it and he sounded like the Bob Dylan from like the early 80s, like almost like Traveling Wilburys Bob Dylan, like from 81 to 87 Bob Dylan. Like anything, because he doesn't say anything live about, like he didn't introduce the song,
Yeah.
but people were like, that's good stuff right there. That was his way. So that's my number 10.
Very good. My number 10 is one I believe you had on your honorable mentions, Crawling Back to You.
Yep.
From Wildflowers, of course. This is a song that I play as often as I can. I just love the whole thing. It's about feeling worn out, depressed, lonely. I'm so tired of being tired. Sure as night will follow day. Most things I worry about never happen anyway.
I love that line.
Is a killer lyric, man. It's about being drawn to someone who's in your comfort zone. You keep crawling back to you. I mean, you just feel at home with a certain someone, even though you know in your heart that you battle and you have issues. Some people they're just they fit like a glove in your eyes. So
yeah.
And I like the ooh, I keep crawling back to you.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorites.
There's some great versions of that on the Wildflowers box set from last year too.
Yeah.
I mean, it is. I mean, it's just a killer. Him on his hands and knees,
Yeah.
calling down the Los Angeles, like how he rhymed knees with Angeles. That's just great.
Yeah. What's the exact? I can't remember. I didn't write down the exact lyric, but it's something like worn out knees or
dirty hands and worn out knees.
That's it. Yeah, fantastic. But I like that line there. Most things I worry about never happen anyway.
That's the one that I always listen to a little bit harder than the other lyrics.
Yeah.
That's a great song.
Had to make my top 10. So there were certain songs that I wanted to get in the top 10, and I sort of went with that. I picked my 10 out and then my back 10, and then unfortunately the honorable mentions.
Yeah, it was one I was thinking about it because I was again trying not to pull too many from one album as well. That was another.
Yeah, you want to spread it out. Yeah,
and I've already mentioned some Wildflowers tracks, and I was like I gotta cut it. So
yep.
On another list, if we were to do this, in a few months, it might be on there.
I know, that's the way it works. You're right.
Yeah.
All right.
Single digits, number 9. Yep. So I think this is the first time I've shown this album, Southern Accents.
Yep.
And the song is Rebels.
Oh, baby.
Which I adore this song. I mean, it's one of those, I mentioned the live anthology earlier. There's and also his concert movie that he did in Gainesville.
Yeah.
It was the 35th anniversary of the Heartbreakers.
Yep.
He does this it's essentially just him and Benmont for a lot of it, and then some minor background instrumentals. But again, I mentioned being from the South. So when Petty wrote this song, the people that Petty grew up with in Gainesville, Florida, you know, of course, you know, the Civil War was terrible and what it did to the country and that sort of thing. But Petty grew up with people that might have had parents who had fought in the Civil War or who had been part of it, and so he could see, being like firsthand, like pain that time had on these people. And I mean, he's not saying it from the point of view as like, you know, the Confederacy versus the Union or anything like that.
Right.
He's just, I mean, you know, we were, you know, it I mean, it fits the whole album. It was like, it's the opening track of the Southern Accents album, which is supposed to be about Southern living, which it ended up being, you know, half 80s production and half of Petty's vision.
Yeah.
But there's just some great, and actually I was mentioning another song when I mentioned him at Benmont playing the piano. I was thinking about the title track. But there's an acoustic version of him playing Rebels, just him on guitar. So disregard past some of what I just said.
That's all right.
But again, it's the same kind of theme. You know, honey, don't walk out. I'm too drunk to follow. You know, I won't feel this way tomorrow. Like,
Love it.
don't worry about, like, I'm being a jerk right now, but that's not who I am.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very high on my list. That's all I'm going to say. I'm
1 foot in the grave, 1 foot on the pedal. That's a Southern line right there.
Yeah.
I mean, my grandfather, you know, God bless him, he's passed away 3 years ago. He used to say, you know, I had 1 foot on the grave, 1 foot in the grave and another on a banana peel.
Yeah, right.
So I can relate to people that talk like that. I mean,
Yeah.
so again, it's one of those, he slowed it down some. It was great. The more rocking version with the horns is fantastic. I mean, it's just a great example of the songwriting.
I love that song. It's going to be very, very high on my list. He played that at Live Aid too.
Yeah, that's about when this came out. Yeah.
Yeah. It was on the Live Aid concert, which was in my hometown, Philadelphia, PA, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. Great pick. Great pick. My number 9 is, again, Damn the Torpedoes. This is probably the album that's going to be represented the most for me. Here Comes My Girl. What can I say? It's half narration. He's like sort of half talking through it in the beginning, setting you up for the song. Said it was inspired by the Shangri-Las, who did a early 60s song called Leader of the Pack, and that had a lot of talking narration in it too. It's being shot down by somebody that he loves, and as soon as he sees her, he forgets all the bad things about why they're not together. When she puts her arms around me, I can somehow rise above it. I got the little girls standing right by my side. You know, I can tell the whole wide world to shove it. And then it goes into the chorus. Here comes my girl. She's all I need tonight. And then I like the little watch her walk thing. Watch her walk.
Yeah.
You know, and then meaning the instrumental. So it's a staple in the Heartbreakers anthology for me.
Yeah. It's a great pick. It's on the greatest hits.
Yes, it is.
All right.
Cool.
Moving to number 8. Number 8. So I'm gonna hop back to She's the One, which I'm really into right now.
Yeah,
with the new Angel Dream
set. I'm gonna show that right now while you're talking about it. This just came out right there.
And everybody should get it.
Everybody should run out and get that one. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, well, just in that vein, I was trying also hard not to put a lot of these songs in the top 10, but I can't help what I'm listening to right now. So
yeah,
it doesn't really matter. Number 8 is Angel Dream. And I just think, again, it's a beautiful, beautiful ballad. I mean, it's one like, you know, I dreamed you, I saw her face. He's thinking about what he could have had, you know, maybe that he might have the chance to get her back. You know, I can only thank God that it's not too late.
Right.
Like he's like he's got one hand out, you know, one hand is hanging onto the cliff, and he's trying to hang on to what he has and sing a little song for loneliness, sing one to make me smile. You know, it's just great little vignettes of lines in that whole song.
Yep.
And I think they do. There are two versions of that song on this. I didn't pick up one over the other that he officially released because he's done some live versions. I know he did like he's good. Some of the live ones on the Wildflowers box set are good. I mean, the two on the album are good. I mean, it's no wrong can be done to that song. And
Excuse me.
again, it's just one of his prettiest ballads, and I love it to death. It's a great song. Very, it's one that later career Petty got a good song.
Yeah. I think we're having a little bit of an internet connection issue, but
It could be the big storm coming. I know you got a big storm coming your way.
yeah, there's the Hurricane Elsa coming up the East Coast here. So I'm just going to go with it, and hopefully it'll be okay. I'll edit out anything that doesn't need to be in here. Are you
So moves
still
to
with
number-
me?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Sorry, you're not moving again, so I can't tell. You're sort of frozen on my side.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine.
Okay. Yeah, I can see you moving in real time.
Okay, I'm just going to go with it. Number 8 for me is from Into the Great Wide Open again, King's Highway.
Oh,
This is this is a catchy little gem. I don't know. It's just my vibe of Tom Petty that I love the most. The melodic sing-along songs with a couple catchy lyrics in there. It's about finding utopia. May good fortune come our way, and we'll ride down the King's Highway. I await the day. I love this particular line here. I don't want to end up in a room all alone. Don't want to end up someone that I don't even know. So he's thinking about getting out. He doesn't want to be somebody who sits around and rots and doesn't really know himself. You see people just wither away, and he wants to go out and see the world. I await the day, good fortune comes our way, and we'll ride down the King's Highway. I just think it's a really cool little rocking song.
great harmony too.
Great harmony. Had to make my list.
And it's kind of a follow up to the Old King's Road from
Yeah.
earlier in his career.
Yep.
Because King's Highway, I think there's a real highway through Florida.
Yeah, that's what I heard. Yep.
Yeah. Very cool. Good deeper cut, further down your list.
Yeah, my next song, which I'll get to after you, is sort of in the same vein. It's kind of that
I love it.
melodic stuff. But you're up with your number 7 now.
Again, this is one of his I'd say one of his final radio hits, and they still play it on classic rock radio. Back to Wildflowers, the killer rocker, You Wreck Me,
Absolutely.
which was that was a common encore opener for him
Yep.
from Wildflowers really to the end of his career. What a great way to kick off, either to kick off a concert or to kick off an encore. I mean, it's just bow bow bow, and then it's just bow, and then bop, and it's a great song. It's one of these. I play in a band for my church, and my uncle who plays the drums, he's a big Tom Petty fan as well. And sometimes before people get there for rehearsal, we'll play You Wreck Me, which doesn't really fit the church band vibe, but it's just me and my uncle playing it because it's vocally it can be like right in my vocal range. I'm not a singer by any means. I'm kind of right there.
Yeah.
I guess one of my favorite. Well, the favorite part that he did live was he would start bringing it down like a little bit, and then it would just go into like a 2-minute groove with Mike or Steve Ferroni on the drums.
Yep.
And when he would say, "I'll be the boy in the corduroy pants, you'll be the girl at the high school dance," and then bow, but like it was just like it's just it's a killer rock song. I mean, probably the most out of place song on the album.
Yeah.
But it's one of my tops on this album just because of how good it is and how much of a groove it could be live without ever seeing him do it live. I mean, I've seen hundreds of videos and audio recordings, but I love it. You Wreck Me. Oh, and from what I understand, he was writing the song as You Rock Me.
That's right.
He didn't really like the title of it, and I think Benmont said, "Well, how about You Wreck," which completely changes the meaning of the song, completely, yep. One word. But that's my number 7.
Well, we're completely in sync because that's my number 7 also.
Hey, there we go.
And I have almost verbatim what you just said in my notes about You Rock Me, and it changed to Wreck, and it's completely changed the meaning of the song. I have that written down. And also The Boy in the Corduroy Pants could be the girl at the high school dance. I mean, I love that little segment. Run with me wherever I go, just play dumb, whatever you know. Rescue me, should I go wrong? If I dig too deep, if I stay too long. Just fantastic. One of my favorite songs. And you're right about the live concerts. That was one of the best songs he ever did, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
That brought the whole audience alive. Everybody
just those
loves
first
that
chords. Song. That Mike would play bow, and then you can just hear on the drum room.
Yeah, for a while he was doing it in the encore, and then he moved it up to the first track or the leadoff show in the concert.
Yeah, a lot of times. Yeah, it works either way.
I remember in the encore a couple times when I saw him, it was like right at the end. It was like the second song from the last.
Yeah. I mean, it makes the audience, it gets their hearts pumping, and everything for the end. Yeah. It's a killer track.
I'm glad we agreed on that. We hit that right on the head, man. Number 7.
That's great. That's really good. All right. So moving to number 6, almost in the top 5. The first time that I'm showing this album, which you've mentioned several times. Sorry for the glare. Listen to Her Heart, and a lot of what you said earlier. Again, it's one of those that I like to play on guitar just because of how you can move your fingers with the chords. It's just really fun to play. Again, like you said, jangly pop.
Yeah.
Birds, McGuinn-esque.
Yep.
But what's cool, and I think they mentioned it in either in the Running Down a Dream documentary or the like the classic album documentary series that came out about this album, where they said, the first 2 Heartbreakers albums was Tom Petty copying Bob Dylan and the Byrds. This was his album where he became Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, which I fully don't get behind, but because like you listen to a song like this and it's straight from the 60s. But I mean, like you said, just some great lines. You just can't creep up behind her. And I guess the thing that I'll add to it, I won't go into fully full in depth about this because you've already done a good job with that. But I know on one of the live performances, he's like, he asked the audience, how many girls are out there, and they all scream, and he's like, well, how many of you like cocaine? And they all scream like, well, this one's for you, which is like an anti-cocaine. It's just, I think it's so cool.
I like that.
Yeah. So yeah, that's my number 6.
Not my number 6 is the anthem that you spoke of earlier, I Won't Back Down, from Full Moon Fever. Had to put it up pretty high on the list. Again, the concert experiences that I've had contributed to how high this ranks. I think this is one of Petty's better songs in concert. Some of the background information. He lost his house to an arsonist.
Mm-hmm.
Back in, I'm not sure what year that was. You might know better than I, but
it probably would have been, I think it was about 88 because that album was 89.
88. Okay. It was right before that. Exactly. And he was just traumatized, of course, grateful to be alive. And he wrote this song. You can stand me up at the gates of hell, but I won't back down. I'll stand my ground, won't be turned around. And I'll keep this world from dragging me down. Gonna stand my ground. And then he gets into the chorus. I won't back down. Hey, baby, just very melodic. There ain't no easy way out. I like that part too, because when you're backed into a corner, there are no easy answers. There are no easy way out, but you're not backing down either. So it says a lot about his character, and I love the song. And
if anybody, with Petty's history, and we haven't really talked about it, but Petty was one who didn't back down, especially in terms of business, because he fought the record company his whole career. I mean, even one of his more recent albums, The Last DJ, was his critique on the music industry being all commercial and with Hard Promises. That was a whole ordeal because the record company wanted to up it $1 more than other
Right.
records, and he said no. He's like, my fans deserve this for this price to be affordable. And there was a huge settlement. It was all in Rolling Stone. It was on the news. So Petty didn't back down from his beliefs ever.
No, and he never gouged you when you went to see a concert either. He didn't charge outrageous prices. You could get it at a reasonable price, you know. Some of these bands that are, you know, lofty, like the Eagles, let's say Fleetwood Mac, McCartney, whoever, they're charging 200, 250 to go see these concerts. And if Petty had done that, I probably never would have saw him. So
yeah.
So I'll give him a lot of credit for that. And I'm sure he stood his ground too, because he could get that kind of price. He was that good, but he didn't think it was right. So
yep, very good outlook.
Top 5, man.
All right, here's the big 5, folks. These are the ones that you all got to listen to, or else. All right, number 5. Again, I'm moving back to She's the One, and this my top 5. So this at this very moment is my top 5.
Okay.
From She's the One, again, either version of the song Walls. And,
unbelievable. We did it again. I have the same song. Go ahead.
Oh, awesome. So we can just make this a little bit longer cut. So, you know, some days are diamonds, some days are rock, some doors are open, some roads are blocked. I mean, but you've got a heart so big, you can crush this town. I can't hold on forever, even walls fall down.
Yep.
I mean, it's just a killer song. And you're like, again, like, how did this come into being? It's just one of the, I mean, that whole album, you know, is kind of hodgepodge with the songs that are on it. And again, Walls is one of the ones that they double up on different takes because they do it 2 different ways. The first version, called Circus, has Lindsey Buckingham doing some background vocals on it, and he adds a lot to it. I mean, it's a different version than the other one, The Walls number 3, which The Walls number 3 is what they put on the Angel Dream album that just came out.
Yeah.
You know, it's just it's one of those songs, kind of like I Won't Back Down. Like, you know, even if you think you're solid, I guess it's kind of like the alternate side of I Won't Back Down. Like, you might think you're solid all the way around, but you know, at some point you're gonna break. I mean, you're a human being, and that's how it is with pressure, stress, life around whatever it might be. Again, one of those songs that hit a little bit harder after he passed away. I think when he died, this is one that I sang as kind of like a tribute to him, and you know, it's one I don't get tired of it ever, either version. And I love that there's 2 versions on it because that means I get to listen to it twice when I listen to the album. But yeah, please tell me your thoughts.
Well, they're pretty much the same. I like both versions too. I might like the Circus version a hair better, but it's very picky. I mean, I can listen to the second version and like it equally as much. The lyric you gave about the diamonds and rocks, I love. How about all around your island, there's a barricade. It keeps out the danger, holds in the pain. He's doing a counterpoint here. Sometimes you're happy, sometimes you cry. Half of me is ocean, half of me is sky. Love that. And, you know, the chorus, you've got a heart so big it could crush this town. I can't hold out forever, even walls fall down. It's a beautiful song. And again, I can't believe we hit on number 7 and number 5 right on the money. It's awesome.
Who knows what's next?
Yeah, we got some big ones ahead. At least I know I do. One of yours.
I've got a couple.
Yeah, I hit on another 2 or 3. Who knows?
Let's see it. All right. I'm glad that I'm glad that song made it to the top 5 because it's not a hit.
Yeah.
So that's cool that we both hit on that. All right. I think you mentioned this in your honorable mention, and I try not to make a face when you said it because I've got this as number 4. It is the title track of this little album right here, Wildflowers.
Yeah.
Again, it's a sentimental song to me. It's one of those songs it's one of those songs I remember when I learned it playing guitar, and I'm sorry that I keep bringing up my guitar experience, but it's one of those songs I remember early playing that when I played it, you know, when you're learning a song, your goal, at least early on, is to like you want to sound like the record.
Yeah.
And like I would play songs like Free Fallin' and things like that. It wouldn't quite sound the same, but I remember when I finally got Wildflowers on guitar, I was like, that sounds like the album. And I'm not a like a guitar, like a great guitar player by any means, but that's one of those, just the simple chords, it sounded like the record. And I thought that was the coolest thing, when I was, 15, 14, however old I was. But again, it's another favorite of my mom, so I have some sentimental attachments to it in that capacity. And from what I understand from Petty is that he wrote this as like a stream of consciousness song into a demo tape, and it ended up essentially being the final take. He didn't. He said the whole song, like almost the whole recording process of like the basic track was like 3.5 minutes. It was like the length of the song, and he I don't think he hadn't written really anything down. He was just singing from his heart, and that's what came out. I'm like, good grief! And that's the core of this whole album is the title track. It sets the whole mood of like that new phase of his career, more introspective and letting go of things too, because he's letting go of somebody in Wildflowers. You belong with your love on your arm, you belong somewhere, you feel free. I mean, that's a very very adult thing of him to do, whereas like earlier, and a lot of people called that like his adult album was Wildflowers.
I can
So his early albums, it's kind of about like getting back at somebody, or kind of having that young man's edge to him. But yeah, I mean, again, Wildflowers, it's one of those that if you listen to a lot of Tom Petty radio, they play it a lot. But again, I got a new wave of love of it when the box set came out last year, and haven't really lost that love since last year. And it's a go-to of mine to play on guitar. So that's my number 4.
Very good. My number 4 is from Hard Promises, A Woman in Love, but it's not me. Love this track. It's a great rocker. It's a song about being dumped by a woman who favors somebody else. The ultimate heartache, slap in the face, if you will. Can hear the pain. I think can hear the pain in Petty's voice. She laughed in my face, told me goodbye. Don't think about it. You can go crazy. Anything can happen. Anything can change. Anything can end. Don't try to fight it. Don't try to save me. And then he goes into the chorus. She's a woman in love. He's going to break her heart to pieces. She's a woman in love, but it's not me. So he knows that's a shot to the heart, man. Time after time, night after night, she would look up at me and say she was lonely. And then here's where you can hear the pain. I don't understand the world today. I don't understand what she needed. I gave her everything. She threw it all away on nothing.
On nothing.
And and it's got searing guitars in it. I just love everything about that song. Had to make a high appearance on my list. I put it at number 4.
Even the guitar sounds like it's crying. I mean,
yeah, there's so much pain and agony in that song.
I love also. You mentioned earlier, like the way he said, "Watch your walk." The way in that song he goes, "Well, all right." He goes, "Do what you want." He kind of goes like, he kind of like makes it.
He modulates his voice, is what he does. He mixes it up. He doesn't give you the same twang or the same pitch. He's up, down, high, low. He's a master at that. I don't think he must have intentionally, because it comes out on the records. But you can hear that when he says, I don't understand the world today. It's almost like he's ready to cry. I don't understand what she needed, She gave it all.
I wonder how many takes, like I wonder how many times that he did that particular line, because that sounds like it's raw,
It
like
does sound raw. It might have been the first one. They just decided to keep it.
Who knows?
That's off of Hard Promises. Is that a Jimmy Iovine also? I think it is.
Hard Promises? Yes, it was. Yeah, Tom Petty and Jimmy Iovine did the production.
I think he might be one of my favorite producers for Petty, although Petty gets the best of the best. You can't argue. I think you can't argue with Rick Rubin or Jeff Lynne either. They're all fantastic.
Plus Petty and Campbell are good
Petty
producers
and Campbell, I mean, and they're leading the way.
and Epstein.
They have final say. It's their record.
Yeah.
So
All right, that's a good one. That's a cool video too, the black and white.
it is. Top
Yeah.
three.
Top three. Again, another one that you've mentioned in your honorable mentions. And the reason I had that album handy for that answer was because The Waiting.
Yeah, I wanted to include it, believe me, I really did.
Again, it seems like, and again, I've mentioned this several times over, but the songs to me that sound like the 60s and sound like the Byrds, I love them. Like Listen to Her Heart, California, and this one. Just great, opening, bow, 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 bow. Like, and then just that, it's a great melodic song. The instrumentation itself, it could have been a cool instrumental, and it would have been a rocking song.
Great song.
Let's see, I wrote something down. Oh, so from what I understand, he got the title from something that Janis Joplin said about being a musician, being a singer, where she said, "I love being on stage and everything else is just waiting." So like everything, like, and that's what musicians always say. They say, the job is, getting into all the customs with the airports and packing and leaving your family for 6 months, missing events. You don't get paid to play. I said, that's what you're like, that is the reward for, 23 hours a day where you're doing nothing. You're on stage for that hour and a half, killing it. And then once you get off the stage, it's back to traveling, back to sleeping, maybe not eating healthy. You're doing the work part of it. But it's just, it's a great song. And there's a great version that he does, that he did live, where it was right when he had broken his hand during the Southern Accents tour. And it's just him on guitar. And he essentially said, I won't use the exact expression that he said, but he was giving and told me I would never play guitar again. He starts playing acoustic, The Waiting, and then he gets to the part, where the whole band breaks into it. I'll be your crying fool. Don't let this go too far. Don't let it get to you. And then they wail into it.
Yeah,
it's just fantastic. That's a great acoustic. That's a great acoustic live version of that song. But yeah, it had to get high up there. And again, it could have been interchangeable as my number one at some days.
It was originally on my list, but I suppose a couple of the deeper cuts in there, and that was one of the ones that was expendable. Although, like you said, if you make a list 6 months from now, that could be very easily represented for sure.
Yeah.
My number 3 used to be my number 1, and that's Refugee.
Okay.
It used to be, always was my number 1, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers song. In recent years, it slipped to number 3. Again, this has passionate lyrics too, a searing guitar. To me, it's about a woman that's been abused or hurt in a bad relationship, trust issues, being burnt, all the above, trying to convince her that not everybody's like the previous guy she was with. Somehow, somebody must have kicked you around some. Tell me why you want to lay there and revel in your abandon. Honey, it don't make no difference to me. Everybody's had to fight to be free. See, you don't have to live like a refugee. We ain't the first. I'm sure a lot of other lovers been burned. Right now, this seems so real to me. It's one of those things you got to feel to be free. And then there comes the instrumental. Just incredible stuff. One of his more rocking songs, I think. A great video too. So
yeah,
I had to get it in there pretty high. I didn't want to put it number 1 anymore because I feel in my heart 2 songs have passed it by. So
yeah, that's one of those again that they play it. Also, saturation becomes a factor. Yeah,
it's overplayed, but for me, I don't know. That's my favorite album too. So you can't really overplay anything on that for me. Like Wildflowers is probably one of your favorites. Damn the Torpedoes is definitely my favorite Heartbreakers album. I think Wildflowers is his best solo work for sure. And I like Full Moon Fever too. I'm not going to discount that.
Yeah. No, it's a good pick. I mean, no argument. Top two.
Yeah.
All right. This was big. This was like, you know, some biting my tongue, saying that which one, where am I going to put these two? And I just, you know, I threw the dart, and this is the one that landed on. So, I mentioned just my previous song that I love the Byrds influence stuff and the 60s stuff. So his most, I was Roger McGuinn on his solo career was American Girl.
Yep.
Which is the closing track of the debut. It was his first huge hit. It's kind of what put him on the map. I mean, it to me. So I have a bucket list of songs that I know I'll never, because I don't play in like a rock band or anything like that. But
yeah,
it's one of those songs that if I was in a rock band and I wanted to do like my top songs that I think would be perfect live, American Girl is close to the very top of like favorite songs that I would love to do live.
Yeah.
I mean, just that intro, the, you know, now, and then
love
like
it.
when they do it live, I mean, they can do that and they can like pause it for as long as they wanted to, and then they could hit it again, and then the whole band breaks into it. I love the bass on it. I play a little bass, and that was like one of the first bass lines, you know, that Ron Blair.
It's got a great bass line.
Yeah, I mean, it's a short song. I mean, it's one of those like, you're like, man, that's the whole song, because like you think about it, it's a larger than life song, but when you listen to it, like almost half of it is the closing instrumental.
It is.
And so like when you're listening to it live, you're thinking like, oh, this is gonna keep going, but I mean, it's done. And I know that there's a line that it was like an unofficial rule that the Heartbreakers have, and they recorded, talking about, you know, more jam based songs and things like that, like 10-minute long songs. They had an expression that they used that said, "Don't bore us, get to the chorus," which I think is perfect. I mean, that encapsulates the Heartbreakers. I mean, as a band, because I mean, their songs, the choruses were almost all, you know, catchy, hooky.
Yeah.
And I mean, American Girl, like I said, and there's, you know, the big rumor where when Roger McGuinn from the Byrds first heard it, he's like, I don't remember ever recording that. And then of course, you know, he covered it, you know, when the Byrds broke up. He recorded it in the 70s for his Thunderbird album. And yeah, I mean, it's as influenced for a Byrd song as you can get, but it's also showing, you know, Tom Petty, like that. That's why I don't believe fully that, you know, Dan the Torpedoes was what made Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, what gave them their sound. Because American Girl to me sounds through and through like Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, because it's full of the influences of the Beatles, Bob Dylan with the vocals, the Byrds, California in general. Just, I mean, it's just a perfect song. I mean, what else can I say?
I couldn't agree more. My number two is one you had earlier, Rebels. This really, I'm real high on this song. And this is actually, I believe, the song that he broke his hand recording, if I'm not mistaken.
You're right. Yep.
It was Rebels. I think he was high on drugs. He was struggling with the arrangement that he wanted. Frustration turned to anger, smashed his hand and sort of pulverized his hand. He was out of commission for a while. I think it was his left hand though, wasn't it? It was, not sure which hand.
Yeah, you notice like later, like he had some nerve damage because that hand kind of shook for the rest of his life.
Again, like you mentioned, did a good job on it. It's being proud of his Southern roots, people, the way he grew up. It's an anthem for all rebels. It's a great rock and roll song. I mean, just awesome all the way through. I was born a rebel down in Dixie on a Sunday morning with one foot in the grave and one foot on the pedal. I was born a rebel. And you got that hey, 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 that chorus. That works in the live setting, especially because the audience would jump right on that. Even before my father's father, they called us all rebels. They burned our cornfields and left our cities leveled. I can still feel the eyes of those blue-bellied devils. And when I'm walking around at night through the concrete and metal, and then you hey, hey, hey again. I like this little vignette in here too. She picked me up in the morning, and she paid all my tickets, then screamed in the car and left me out in the thicket. Well, I never would have dreamed that her heart was so wicked, but I keep coming back because it's so hard to kick it. Beautiful, beautiful
And then
song.
when he says kick it, I mean, they really kick it.
Yeah, the wordplay is fantastic. It's risen in my. If I would have made this list 10 years ago, Rebels might have been an honorable mention, but I keep listening. It just rose to number 2 this time around. Love it.
Yeah.
I'm anxious to hear what your number 1 is.
Well, I believe you've already mentioned it, but you mentioned it, I think, again, in the honorable mentions category. Wow. And I tried not to make any kind of face or, disapprove of you as a person.
You did a good job, because I didn't notice you were so down on me at that point.
So I was actually, and you talked about Rebels. So my number 1 today at this very moment is the title track, Southern Accents.
Yeah, that was one of my honorable mentions.
And I accidentally started talking about it earlier, talking about Rebels. So now to put it into where it belongs, one of my favorite versions of it is with Tom and Benmont, the keyboardist, just playing piano with Tom Petty singing, and especially live, because you can hear Petty's pain in the song. But just the opening line just fits. Again, being from the South, I mean, it's not so much now necessarily, but I mean, there was the stereotype, if you're from the South, you're a little bit dumber. It's like the first couple stanzas, there's a Southern accent where I come from. The youngins call it country, the Yankees call it dumb, which I just like. It tears my heart, like, because it's just so, like, it just automatically, the song just becomes a different level with that opening line, because he uses the Southern expression youngin to refer to this, just kids calling it country, like this is how you talk. Right. But then other people that he might work with, say, oh, you're dumb. I got my own way of talking where everything is done with a Southern accent where I come from. Yeah, and like great. every stanza, it's always done like, I got my own way of working where everything is done with a Southern accent where I come from. The drunk tank in Atlanta is a motel room for me. I think I might go work Orlando if the orange groves don't freeze, which is kind of an oxymoron, because there's not going to be orange groves freezing in Orlando. No. So it's just like, he's never going to do it. He's just going to sit back and enjoy. And then the bridge, just a minute there, I was thinking that this was also real. Like, you can hear his voice, just, there's a lot of pain. And what's so crazy is just, this was the B-side to Rebels. So imagine that single coming out, just those two powerhouses, that 1-2 punch of, songwriting. I mean, and neither one of these songs are really, mainstream. I mean, even Rebels being rockier, it's not mainstream rock.
No, you would hear Rebels once in a while on FM radio. You never hear Southern accents, I don't think. I haven't.
No.
And you should.
And again, I don't know if this is going to be your number 1 or not, but I'm going to mention it for the sake of talking about this song and this album, because another song that almost made my honorable mentions, I kind of looking back on it, it's one of those I'm going to regret not putting even on my list, is the song "The Best of Everything" from the album Southern Accents.
That's another beauty, yeah.
Which is background vocals by Richard Manuel of the band, like the band, and then Robbie Robertson is on it as well from the band. So Southern Accents kind of has like that band saying, like, you could hear Lee Von Helm from the band doing this. And actually, Johnny Cash did it on one of his American recordings with Rick Rubin later, and it's a heartbreaking version that Johnny Cash does, because he's older, he's withered, he aged very fast, and right. Again, it's just to me, it's just a perfect song. And people might be surprised that I picked a ballad for number 1, because he's the best American rock band as far as I can tell. And I mean, again, I'm like you, like, I'm kind of stuck on the songwriting aspects of his career, and Southern Accents to me is like pinnacle. So
I
that's my
I
number
can't
one.
argue with it because I love the song too, but I didn't want to have all ballads on my list. And
I
I
didn't
tried to
either,
mix it
really.
up. That's why the best of everything did make it. I think you're right. I think it's fantastic, but I wanted to have
Yeah.
a balance of rock. I think I only have two or three ballads on here as I go through. I have a lot of hits, but Time to Move On is kind of acoustic. Down South, I like a lot. Crawling
Walls
Back
kind
to
of.
You. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's moderate. Anyway, my number one, I couldn't get away from it. It's the quintessential Tom Petty song for me. The last one he ever performed live at the Hollywood Bowl, American Girl.
Yeah.
I just, it kickstarts his career, so to speak. That riff, the opening riff that you mentioned, you know what it is. You can hear, and then American Girl's coming at you. And
Yeah.
if there's one song that Petty will ever be remembered for and associated with, I think it's this song. I mean, I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't. If, they always say on your obituary, what are they going to say? Tom Petty, American Girl. I mean, probably. I mean, he's. I Won't Back Down's up there. Free Fall, which I left off, is probably one of his staples. But
Yeah.
I love American Girl. Every time I hear it, it's genius. All the way musically, as well as lyrically. Uh, she was an American girl raised on promises. She couldn't help thinking that there was a little more to life somewhere else. After all, it was a great big world with places to run to. And if she had to die trying, there was one little promise she was going to keep. And then they get into you know, the chorus. Um, I like this song here too. It was kind of cold, or this lyric was kind of cold that night. She stood alone on her balcony. She could hear the cars roll by out on 441 like waves crashing on the beach. Great image.
Yeah.
And for one desperate moment, he crept back in her memory. God, it's so painful. Something that's so close and still so far out of reach. Just fantastic. And you mentioned the bass line by Ron Blair. And it sticks out to me because when I watch some of these early videos on YouTube, you can really hear that thumping bass line, especially in that there's a BBC video when they were young and they played over there.
Yeah.
I think it's 1978 somewhere. Forget the name of the show it was on, but Tom Petty's got like a green shirt and a black coat on. It really rocks, and and Blair's bass really is standing out. Whoever mixed that particular recording, it jumps out at you.
Yeah.
And of course, that, like you said, half the song, the second half of the song is just that solo with
Yeah.
Mike Campbell, and Petty's sort of just jamming a little bit, doing one of these things, and then playing off the mic. He's, all right. And
Yeah.
then Campbell's just going into outer space with that guitar. It's fantastic. So I had to put it number one. And
Hey,
probably,
it was my number two.
I know. So we did well. We're on the same wavelength pretty much. And I really love Southern accents too. I hated leaving it off my list because it's such a Tom Petty song. Just the title itself and the album and what he's trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
You know? And
Right.
Rebel, like you said, that single with Rebels on one side and Southern accents on the other. That was a statement at that time,
Oh yeah.
So
Cool
anyway,
list.
great list. I'm really happy to do this with you, Sam. Thank you very much for agreeing to do it. I love your list, and can't wait to see how it plays when we show it. So anybody out there, Sam St. John, sub his channel, leave some comments. We'd like to hear your top. You don't have to give us 20, but give us 5 or 10 favorites of Tom Petty. We'd love to see how our lists match up with yours, and we will see you down the road. So for Sam St. John, I'm Rich. We'll see you next time. Take care. Bye.